We will be waiting a little bit for viewers to come in, but we have the setup here all ready to go for a Ruins of Doharum full set review for the purposes of card design evaluation. I am Zoo. With me is
Koala, aka Koala Bear, aka I guess Koala. I don't know. I just go by Koala. I have a name. Well, I have a human that also has a name. Pet human. His name's Kyle. Kind of new to the, kind of off and on a magic designer. Haven't really designed any sets I'd consider good, but I like to evaluate cards, and I'm a total Melvin. So there's that. Also with us is
Tyrant. Simon Williamson. I've had a hand in a few custom sets about it.
Cool. So we're just going to be waiting a little bit for me to advertise the stream in a few different places to see if anyone wants to watch what is going to be the circus of this stream. In the meanwhile, maybe I can give a short description of the kind of the history of the set. Or, well, actually, no, because no one's watching. That doesn't matter.
Are you sure that I can't give a fake sponsorship? Like
I would very much prefer you not to give a fake sponsorship. Yes.
So, how old is Doharum actually? Like the set, like 2 years, 3?
It's fairly old. Kind of like its own subject matter. It's fitting, to be fair.
Yeah. We have to be just as brutal.
See, the thing about the fake sponsorship is it gives me an opportunity to fill air, so that when people tune in, they don't just see nothing. It's there's actually activity going on, because it's you berating me for how awful my fake companies are.
Okay, so I have advertised it in 2 places, and at this point, I think we are just wanting to begin. So, what we will be doing is we will be going commons first, starting from white, going through all the different colors, and within the colors, we'll be going up from the low CMCs to the high CMCs. So, what we're going to be attempting to do is both analyze individual cards for their individual fun, how they're impacting the set, and also kind of any structural, developmental, limited design problems that we see. And so and sorting by CMC is going to help with that a lot. So the first card we see is one that I have had a little bit of experience with so far. It is Bastion Defender. So do we want to read these out loud, or do we want to just assume that these are being shown?
You should absolutely read them out loud.
Okay. Do you? Who wants to do that? Should I?
Go for it.
Cool. Bastion Defender is white for a 2/2 creature dwarf soldier. It can't attack unless you control an artifact. So this is kind of in a similar vein to a lot of other efficient but with downside white creatures we've seen before, or perhaps small creatures that become quite efficient for their size on a certain condition. Thoughts, gentlemen?
I know there's supposed to be a white X aggressive artifact deck, or I believe there is. And so it
Yes.
seems decent to signal that.
Are we allowed to talk about M19 spoilers? Because there's an relevant card from M19. Or are we going to say no because people don't want to be spoiled?
I would say not.
Okay, it feels a lot like Inventor's Apprentice. Inventor's Apprentice being the uncommon red drop from Kaladesh that is a 1/2 and gets +1/+1 if you control an artifact. It's a very similar thing, except this is very good as a defender, which makes sense as it is a bastion defender. I personally think it's a bit more interesting of a design if it's a, say, 0/2 unless you control an artifact, something that makes it that's effectively the same thing, but makes it a bit more interesting in that, like, you can still do everything you want to do. If you want to attack with a 0/2, you could, but it's very limiting in how it is now.
Mm-hmm. As is, I could see. I mean, so it does the good job
that would be
of
relevant with Warband in the set.
Right. Yeah, in terms of just making sure that there are things you can attack with.
Yeah, this is similar to cons, where sometimes you just swing in with the Yoked Ops if you need it.
Mm. And that was for raid.
Yeah, for raid.
Yeah. So, and for those unaware, there's a mechanic in this set that rewards creatures for attacking together. So having a defender on board can occasionally be a little, you're like, I'm not happy about this arrangement.
Yeah, occasionally would just be happier with an X2 or like an O2 than a 2/2 defender. So in the context of the set, I could totally defend that.
Okay, so
I'm not sure that would be desirable. White isn't trying to be warband here, but something to consider.
Right. Well, and we were talking about if this is especially going to be going into like a white-red aggressive deck where they're kind of just playing this as a Savannah Lions, then red has a lot of the warband in the set, so that interaction is going to happen a lot more in the deck that's intended to use it. Another thing that seems to be mostly being used for is the white-blue structures deck, structures being a special kind of artifact that's present in the set, where it is more so acting as a defender, so I think it's a little more healthy in that environment. But anyways, let's move on to the next card. Cling to Life. You white for an instant. Until end of turn, target creature gains lifelink, and when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So obviously we see here that -1/-1 counters are a mechanic in the set. They're a theme of the white-black archetype as well. So this we see just kind of a classic save my creature counter spell, or instant spell, used with -1/-1 counters instead. Any thoughts?
This isn't pulling any particular work in the set mechanically. It just workhorse design wise. It fits a larger motif in Doharum of just survival.
Mm-hmm. It's cool for the flavored stuff.
And it doesn't distract from the other themes.
Mm-hmm. One maybe perhaps minor quibble I have with this is that I personally think this feels rather black. This is it's
gaining persist.
Well, and the lifelink. Right, there's nothing about this that makes it not a black card, but obviously that's not, you can't always avoid that. So something to think about at the very least. Another thing is actually we'll see in the 2-drop slot, actually let me travel down to it, a creature that is already kind of doing the same thing in white, the Murkim Survivors. So it's possible that there's a certain amount of overlap there. But as an individual design, Cling to Life it's doing good things in the set other than just not doing very much.
Yeah. So, Dune, or is it okay if we?
Yeah.
I had a quick rules question. Does that, because it essentially grants persist, am I right in thinking that that's what the mechanic is?
Yeah, well, except it works on something that already has a neg counter on it. Yeah,
so it's pseudo persist. Does that work? Does that ability stick around when it comes back to the battlefield?
It does not.
Will it still have...
It becomes a new object.
Yeah.
That's how I thought it worked.
So this works once, it would want it to.
Yeah, Dune Watcher is a One mana, 1/1. My favorite converted mana cost in CMC combination. It's a human nomad scout for 1 white. It has whenever Dune Watcher or another nomad enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So it's kind of like a Soul Warden
Sister.
kind of effect, Soul Sister sort of thing, except tribal only. It, as far as limited is concerned, it seems bad. I think it could just be Soul Warden, because Soul Warden at common's totally fine as a card, but
Well, that's not
it
what
does.
it's trying to do design-wise, and on that note, I actually very much dislike this design, since it's a reward for being nomads, but it does not pull you into nomads. And actually, in white, there's nothing that makes me say, oh, you know what, I should be playing nomad.
Well, I imagine in terms of how he's aligned the slots, this is intended to be the main thing that would bring you into nomads in white. But obviously, like you said, this is so weak because even like a traditional Soul Sister is like not amazing in limited. This is
just inconsequential.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I would so much rather see this as you gain 2 life or 3 life or like more life and just have it not trigger off of itself. Like, I think if you raise how much life you gain, you can't have it trigger off itself just because it's such a life swing. But you could do something like I want to say Novice Healer, but that's the version I made. There's the Lone Missionary, I think it's a hiker that gains you 4 life when it enters the battlefield from either original Zendikar or Worldwake, I want to say. But something like that, that's nomad specific, would be much more interesting of a pull into Dune Watcher.
Yeah.
Or into nomad.
So definitely seeming not really doing its job is what we'd call that. And so here's another thing here, that this is an issue that Simon has raised a few times in the past, which is the issue of the nomad type itself. So as Simon likes to say, it's not a supported type. Obviously, that doesn't stop custom designers from doing that, or from bringing back old types that are not supported anymore, or just inventing their own types. But what is the actual issue with nomad as a thing that a set cares about?
Yeah, so nomads flavorfully are vagabonds, and in the set who go across the desert. And I think Dune Watcher is a great example of why, or just how much overlap that has with being a scout. Like, in the context of the set, nomads are just sand scouts, and so much so that Dune Watcher is a scout. It makes it very hard to tell what a nomad is when you're fanning a pack. It makes it harder to remember what a nomad is, especially.
Mm-hmm. You might like have a card that you've drafted and go, wait, is that a nomad? I don't remember.
It's very, like, I could justify nearly anything being a nomad in my head, so I might mistakenly assume things are.
Mm-hmm. You're using your internal flavor compass to guide you when the actual material presented by the set is otherwise not good enough for that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So definitely something that we might point out a few more times over the course of this review. Any cards where it's like, oh, that really like shows this problem off. Speaking of which, the next card, or actually, do we have any last thoughts on the Dune Watcher?
No, we can move on.
Cool. So we're going to move on to the Mrkim Survivors. I'm going to read this one. 1 and a white for a 2/2. So classic, just white bear with, as we'll see upside here, a creature human nomad. And if damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage and put a -1/-1 counter on it instead. So it'll, take some damage once, or it won't take it. It'll take a negative counter, become a 1/1. As it's a 1/1, then it'll do that again and just die. So it kind of has persist.
With so many neg counters in the set, why is this not just a death trigger?
Right, you're saying because in terms of like, yeah, because for a 2 toughness creature, it's difficult to take damage without dying. There aren't many things in Magic that deal 1 damage.
This is like, and especially in limited, you're playing very few 1/3s. You know, you're not playing 1/1s really. You're playing 2/1s, 2Xs
Mm-hmm.
at the smallest most of the time, and so often when this takes damage, it is just when this would die the first time, it
Mm-hmm.
gets reduced to a 1/1. And in a set with so many neg counters and pushing that, you know, it just doesn't protect it a lot of the time, or it just kills spells. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think the case where I'm also not sure what it's doing. I guess it's supposed to be a sticky creature for aggressive decks,
For
or
aggressive deck and the decks
something
that
that
care
can
about
block
-1
twice.
counters.
I just think a death trigger would be cleaner and preserve most of what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially it also does a weird thing where it's like much worse versus black removal than versus red. Red looks at this card and goes, "Come on, really? I can't burn this thing? How unfair." You know.
Definitely, definitely.
Is Koala
I believe he's AFK.
okay? So for those of you watching, Koala has to keep leaving, coming back, or whatever, because he's actually at his workplace currently. So expect him to be doing that. Let's move on to the next card. So we have Reproach. It's 1 and a white for an instant. Put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature that dealt damage this turn. So this is, once again, we see in just a long line of white spells that are just like destroy a creature that's attacking, destroy a creature that damage. The most readily available comparison here is to Avenging Arrow, right?
Mm.
Because it requires that it dealt damage. So this could be when it attacks you, it hits you, you reproach it. It attacks you, you block it, you reproach it. You attack into it, it blocks, you reproach it. So it covers all those situations.
Yeah, I don't see this like this is just another workhorse limited card. It
Mhm.
reinforces neg counters, and why I don't love Murkim Survivors little tweak. But you know, it's just the only thing I don't like about it is the one-word name. You know, reproaches. Gideon's reproach has been
Mhm.
used for this type of effect. Just, one-word names, you know, very easy for Watsy to steal it from you, which makes you having a card with that name very confusing.
Mhm. Or for other custom
It-
designers to do it as well.
yeah, and it makes this card harder to remember, at least for me. I hear reproach do something bad to an attacking creature, or something that dealt damage. I think Gideon's
But your
reproach.
first thought wouldn't have been neg counters, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it makes it much harder to remember this card in particular, and it makes it easier to misremember it.
Mm-hmm. So I think this is one of the situations where if we look through the flavor text, there is supposed to be a specific kind of there's city states that are warring here, war bands and wanderers. That's ample flavor fodder for
Reproach.
reproach of the bandits reproach, or there's any number of little variants you could put on that. So definitely solvable. Let's move on to the next card.
Sand Sentinel, 1 and white for a 2/1 spirit. Whenever an artifact ETBs under your control, target creature gains flying until end of turn. Remember when I said there was an aggressive white artifact deck?
Yes, this is a very important card for that deck.
Yeah, artifact fall just makes artifacts actually affect the board
Mm-hmm.
to a degree, which is nice. The art always looked like a nomad to me, so
I mean,
seeing the
it has like weird
here
like
makes
anatomy
sense.
going on somewhat. You can see like the hands are quite
Clothing.
large.
Just like clothing
Yeah.
screams nomad to me. But yeah, I actually quite like the card. It very much brings people to the main sub-theme, which is artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to care about and want artifacts. This also makes sealing spells, which we will see later.
Yeah.
Less of a tempo loss.
Yeah, because especially a big part of sealing is that you're spending 2 mana to not affect the board this turn. This card makes it so you are.
What you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite like Sand Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers on it, I think, are also completely where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a card. So I drafted in the last Doharum draft that I was in attendance for. I drafted the white-red aggressive aggro artifact deck, and it was definitely played exactly like you said. It was this, and there's also another piker in red that has a very similar artifact ETB. Target creature can't block this turn, so very much you're getting evasion, you're getting a tempo increase for playing artifacts. So it was really satisfying to play that and this, and then play some sort of seal spell or some sort of low drop artifact creature. Just made that work a whole lot better than you would otherwise think. The next card.
Them on the board.
Oh yeah,
Go ahead.
just go get them. I was gonna say the next card we have is another thing that cares about artifacts ETBing, but this time in a very different way. We have the Tyrant's Edict, no relation to Mr. Simon Williamson, who we have with us here. We have 1 and a white for an aura. The enchanted creature can't attack, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, exile the enchanted creature. So this is in some ways similar to some other variants on passivisms that we've seen in the last few sets. We've seen there was the one that cared about vehicles.
Caught in the Brights.
Caught in the Brights, yeah. So this is, I would say, very similar to that. And also there was one in the custom set Lorado that had very similar flavor. That was red, though, wasn't it?
Yes, tied to the track.
Yeah, what a great card.
The black, but was red shifted to keep the artifact themes tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Tyrant's Edict, points towards a very defensive white deck. If you are the deck running Sand Sentinel, they are both white 2-drops, but they artifact. You obviously don't want to pick this up. You are trying to get them to remove blockers for you. This.
Yeah, it's a little awkward in that regard, where it's like it seems to be the white, because caring about artifacts is a set theme. It's something that just the whole set is doing. It's an artifact matters set. But in white, and especially in this low white, very competitive slot, it is the aggressive deck that is going to be wanting this even more. And yes, the fact that by default it is a guard duty rather than a passivism it's a bummer, right?
Well,
you're still going to play it, but it's like, this is just kind of annoying.
And there are decks that don't want guard duty sometimes. It's completely fine. Just, it shows that white is trying, or there is a slow white artifact deck, and that everything in the set is artifacts.
Yeah, well, so and that's what I would consider to be a part of what the problem I have with it is that when you're saying there is a slow artifact deck, which one? Which one of them is it?
Honestly, it might be more productive to specify what is not the artifact deck.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, if all the colors care about artifacts, that means every combination of white X in some ways cards cares about artifacts, which does lead to confusions like these among us looking at the cards, but even people who are looking at the set for the first time who are drafting it, whatever, and perhaps makes it in a weird way a little bit good stuff. In a sense where the synergies are there, but they're not different between the archetypes in such a way as to create a synergistic archetype. It's weird that way. Or would you say that you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I'm trying to think, how did that play out in Kaladesh? I think that's, this is larger artifact themes in Kaladesh. Also pushed you towards things like energy, I guess. But
I feel like there was more differentiation in Kaladesh.
That's fair. And here it's just every deck is trying to pick up a B.
Yeah.
They're aggressive A's, aggressive defensive A's, and they're trying to chase after the same bees in a theory.
Yeah, which we'll see later that there's ample material, ample fodder for that. Yeah, so it's not like a problem, but it might, like we said, it might cause a little bit of confusion. Let's move on to the next card. We have Wandering Ascetic. Or would you like to read this one?
Wandering Ascetic, 1 and a white for a 1/3 human nomad. You can pay 3 and a white and sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. It, like, defensive decks will love it. Just 1/3s for 2 aren't amazing, but with a small amount of utility, they become quite nice. Naturalize is very powerful in this format.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, like, there are 7 mana artifacts that the set is pushing you to play.
Especially instant speed.
Yeah.
Like this is. And another thing, actually, is in this format, there's a lot of emphasis, at least from the play that I did so far, on holding mana up, especially with the sealed mechanic, which is basically you pay some mana up front to make a spell instant speed. So being able to hold up this 3 and a white with any kind of other instant speed effects or sealed spells that you have has a lot of utility. So yeah, seems like a cool role player for those decks, the slower white decks. Otherwise, no comments on it.
I did not read this next card.
Oh, because of the yes. So, Doharum is a fan of its apostrophes in names. Simon is I believe not a fan of apostrophes in names. Is that right?
They scare me.
They scare. Well, here we have the Ashkal Lookout. That's what I'm going to call it. 2 and a white for a 1/3 creature bird soldier. Love me some birds. And whenever it attacks, untap target creature you control. So this is a bit of a stranger one, because it's effectively giving itself vigilance or giving something else vigilance. So this is a tool for decks that have a little more beef on the board, perhaps, to attack in while allowing a blocker for the next turn.
I remember Doharum used to have a stronger untapped creatures tribal theme. Like the 1-drop used to be can't attack unless you control an untapped creature or something like that. I think
it got +1/+1 as long as you controlled an untapped creature.
Oh, that's it. I think this is a remnant from that, and actually in this iteration is really finicky.
It's strange. I don't understand what it's doing.
It's another 1/3, and just from what I've seen of the set, there is a very slow white deck, and a white deck actually running 1-drops and trying to kill you very quickly, and this is trying to race. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not sure it's pulling weight.
It seems like one of those things where it's like, it's not bad, it's text that is not being used to push the set as being what it needs to be, is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah. This is a lookout. It is not a nomad, not a scout, but a soldier, which I think is quite interesting.
Notable. I mean, obviously, you don't want every white creature to be nomad, otherwise the tribal element is meaningless.
Oh, yeah, it's just like the name doesn't reinforce it not being a nomad, which I think can help with the art resource.
So I'm going to respond to some people on the Twitch. So we had Leica says, I think putting on the side of the mechanics and archetypes would be helpful. I will do that in the future. This is the first time we've ever done a stream like this. Obviously, so thank you for noticing things we can improve on. I'll do that definitely next time. And then Arshig says, Lookout feels like it should be a 2-1. And I tend to agree in this capacity. I think, especially with the fact that the other low drop flyer in white is conditional, I think it's a bit strange for like the medium white flyer to be this defensive of a body. It's not giving white its evasive tools that it might need.
That would make it so much nicer for the aggressive deck that is trying to race.
Yes. Yeah, and I think so. This is something that I've talked with Pass the Chips about before. Sorry, maybe we forgot to mention that Pass the Chips is the name of the guy who's making the set and has been making it for a long time. I talked about this with him before, but I was thinking that I was seeing a little bit of evidence of warp in terms of perhaps a fear of invalidating structures. So structures is a big part of the set. They're kind of like artifact planeswalkers. We'll see one eventually. But obviously, part of the gameplay of structures then is defending them in much the same way that you defend planeswalkers. So I can imagine any kind of designer thinking, oh, well, I can't make that much evasion, I can't make that much aggression in a set where there's these fragile structures, because otherwise people are going to think they're bad, they're going to die all the time. And I think this card may be evidence of going too far in that direction, for example. But obviously, hard to know for sure. Any other comments?
I have none.
Okay. We're going to move on to the Lithomancy Adept. Would you like to read this one?
2 into Lithomancy Adept. 2 into white for a 3/2 Dwarf Artificer with wonderful art, by the way. You can pay a Runic and tap it to tap another target creature. Runic can be paid with 1 mana from an artifact source or by tapping an untapped artifact you control. So it's kind of like improvised mana.
Yes. So a lot of comparisons have been made to Improvise. A lot of comparisons have been made to Machinate, which was a mechanic from another custom set that actually happened to feature Doharum flavor, which is pretty cool. And if anyone is listening and not watching, the runic mana symbol has this really cool alchemical symbol in a yellowish brown background.
I did Pink Floyd actually. So it's a goblin rough rider that can hold the fort if you have artifacts. This is feels bread and butter common for white, since just rough riders are okay in aggressive decks. This can obviously just block whatever if you're the slow artifact deck.
Mm-hmm. It's very flexible. It can go into a bunch of different decks, and as we saw, a bunch of different decks are caring about artifacts in white.
Like a 3-mana tapper that's conditional on you having artifacts isn't amazing. So it's not like a top tier white common. It is just like very decent in any deck in the format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's nice to have a few of those.
Cool. And is this the first dwarf we've seen as well?
I believe so.
Yeah, dwarves.
No, actually, the Bastion Defender was it.
Oh, right. The first card we looked at was a dwarf, right? So we had a little more to talk about there, but here we can just say dwarves.
Hiding behind his shield on the 1-drop.
Mm-hmm. I love me a dwarf. All right. Let us move on. So we have the other white 3-drop that's something that we can maybe go back in a little bit to look at once we've looked at white, is what I was talking about before, about looking at the different converted mana costs to see what's going on at, like, what are the 2-drops? Are they all too similar? What are the 3-drops, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
But we'll do that after probably looking through all of white. So we're going to look at Saran Pilgrims. We have it for a 2 and a white for a 2/3. And a creature, human nomad, and it gets +1/+1 and has vigilance as long as you control a structure. So it's a 3 mana, 3/4 with vigilance as long as you control a structure. So the structures of those aforementioned artifacts that kind of do planeswalkery things. They don't have as many knobs and buttons and things to do as planeswalkers, but basically they can be attacked and destroyed by creatures, and otherwise they accrue value by being on the board.
So a lot of the creatures in Doharum are actually not even small as much as normally sized, which
Yes.
makes a 3/4 vigilance control the board
Very, very
really
well. Yes.
and I think that's fine for pushing structures. I do want to say though that this is you're using one of your nomad slots here as a structure synergy card.
Because like the nomad deck is the white-green archetype, and the structures deck is mostly the white-blue archetype. So there's a little bit of weird tension there.
I think it also might, and just purely flavorfully for a second, it's odd that a pilgrim and nomad is defending a structure.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's like, hey, we have this house that we live in. What do you mean? That means I'm not a nomad if I live in a house?
Lawn.
Yeah, so that's a little strange.
But yeah, it just seems like an ill-advised place to use your nomad slot if you are pushing that as a tribe. It just makes drafting a little less smooth. But type lines aside, I do appreciate it as a way to encourage people to play structures simply because it makes structures affect the board more.
Yes. It says when you play this structure, not only is it doing what it does, it's giving your surround pilgrims +1/+1 at vigilance. And basically giving you, in otherwise what might turn into, I'm stuck defending the structure for the rest of the game, it turns into, no, I have a win condition. I have a creature that I feel safe attacking with because I don't lose my structure.
Yeah,
because it has
on
vigilance.
many boards in limited a 3/4, you can just roll in.
It's very safe.
Safe.
Yeah.
So all of the Dohar, 3 into white for a sorcery. Tap up to 3 target creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature. For each tapped creature on the battlefield. Period. This way, not your opponent's control.
Yes.
And it has seal for 2 into white. Seal is you can pay 2 generic to create an artifact token with the spell under it, and you can cast the spell under the artifact, the relic, by paying 2 into white and sacrificing it.
Yes.
It's like artifact morph, or a spell morph.
It's a weird like when people say spell morph, they often mean a spell that turns into a creature, but in this case we have a spell that is turning into a artifact on the battlefield. An artifact that does nothing other than be a place from which to cast that spell later, but for instant speed. So a big part of it, there's this kind of trap card Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay here, with a little spice with the artifact itself also being relevant in the set. So obviously, because we've saw it before, artifact fall, runic mana, this is going to be one of the ways in which you're going to be able to feed that in kind of any deck.
Yeah, like you're paying 2 mana for an artifact. Just runic makes them signets, sort of.
Yes, in a certain sense.
In a very good sense. This card in particular, really good for the just super nice for the defensive white deck. It gets you that artifact trigger. You get to, lock out 3 creatures to stall a combat.
Right, because you're sealing this and using this to tap down attackers before they attack. You're like getting a time walk out of it, kind of.
Draw steps aside, it can often just be a time walk. Often you just play this as a 5 mana spell.
Yes.
That is 3 things can attack, gain some life. And if you got some artifact fall triggers out of it, that's quite nice. And there's another sealed spell after it.
So off of the Dohar, I have Past the Chips will know. I've talked about this card before. I'm very much not, as a designer, a fan of the second line. And I'll explain a little bit. My philosophy here is that when you're dealing with set mechanics, especially, and especially what is a slightly on the more complex side set mechanic, and this isn't raid. This isn't just like check for a condition and get a bonus. This is like you're doing an extra action to change how the spell works. There's multiple numbers involved, so it's slightly more complicated. So when you're dealing with something like that, my policy is always where the rest of the card should be only enough text to create the different gameplay of the card. So that is the tap up to 3 target creatures. The gameplay of Sealed here is the base mode is tapping blockers. The Sealed becomes tapping for a full turn cycle attackers and blockers.
There are 2 things I want to add. First of all, you know when a mechanic is complex when you are worried about how to explain.
Yes.
I was worried about how to explain Sealed.
Yeah, because you didn't read the reminder text. You just explained it in like a casual way.
Yeah, I would not do that to your viewers. Seal is when you mentally play it to see how powerful it is. There are so many variables already. Do I hardcast it on my turn as a sorcery? Do I just seal it for 2? When do I play it afterward if I do seal it for 2? Do I do it immediately as a 5-mana card? Do I wait? And it has so many moving parts, and then you realize, okay, it's not just creatures tapped this way. It is any tapped creatures. So if I attacked the turn before, I'm gaining life. If my opponent attacked with other things, I can be gaining life.
Yeah, because if this was like you gain 3 life, right, then that would be, you don't have to think about that.
It takes a mechanic with a lot of variables and adds more variables on a common. So there's a very strong argument for that being too much.
And actually, another reason why you would want to change that is the next card that we will see, because here we have both white sealed cards. This next card is also a sealed card, both at 4 mana, which is like, it's not the end of the world. It just looks a little weird. So if you remove that line, you'd be able to make it 3 mana. By this point, I think Pass the Chips will maybe be a little bit annoyed at my vendetta here. So let us move on to this next card. We have Radiant Glow. It is 3 and a white for a sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+1 till end of turn. Seal for 3 and a white. So on the front side, it's a worse Ethereal Guidance, which is a card from Shadows over Innistrad. And on the back side, it's you're paying a little bit more upfront, but it becomes instant speed. You're able to trick people with it. So, thoughts on this card?
So, I love Trumpet Blasts till the day I die, and this, I just so much wish the seal here was tuned to white. I can see why he made it 4 mana to not be too similar to the last white seal card. But even if you can use this defensively on the front, it is just so awkward and finicky to use.
Mm-hmm.
Like, seal is already clunky. I would try, and especially if you're thinking about it like a Timmy, and you've learned this with the hollow mechanic in Hollows of Lordran. Players don't value flash as much as they should.
Yes.
Which makes seal harder to be appealing. It is already fighting an uphill battle for...
Yeah, because like especially low skill players will say, I have to pay 2 extra mana to just make it instant speed? Like, useless.
Yeah. Like, and when you have a mechanic with so many moving parts that is pulling weight in the set by bringing up the artifact as thing, I do think you want to push these things to be appealing. I do. And especially when the seal cost is the front side. I think it should be more obvious.
Oh, hi Koala. Oh, so Arshig in the comments advocating for Pass the Chips, who has previously said that the set is intended for, it's intended to be a higher complexity. Actually, Arshig, obviously you'll be hearing us with a somewhat delay. I remember him saying, past the ships that is, that it was intended to be higher complexity, not necessarily that it was ignoring the needs or the cares of low-skilled players. So if you could clarify that, that'd be really good for me.
Also, high complexity is fine, but that doesn't mean you should have complexity when it's not doing anything, when it's not pulling weight. Conspiracy sets are high complexity. Master sets are high complexity. They still don't have it for no reason. Master sets, they strive to not include a mechanic unless they have 3 cards with that mechanic in the set at least. And that's because enfranchised players still don't want to be bogged down with complexity for no reason. That's just creating a barrier and have it not do anything. That's not clean design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, and that's our philosophy on that, and I think we'll continue to critique it in that manner. Past the Chips is a skilled enough designer that he'll be able to take anything that he needs to, that we say, with a grain of salt or his own view on it, I think.
Yeah. Just to confirm, we're at right now is the card we're talking about?
Radiant Glow, and then we're about to move on.
Awesome. Sounds good. Just want to make sure I'm in the right spot.
All right. Smite the Monstrous. It's Smite the Monstrous. It does sideboard things. Or like we talked about previously, there's the format is like it's normal sized. There's probably not an insane amount of targets for this.
It's not like in a Dragons of Tarkir, where it's so bomb heavy. You might lean for this.
Yeah. And alternatively, I think there's mostly, from my previous experience, there's not a lot of Voltron elements either. In fact, actually, I think there's no equipment in the set at all, which is something I've brought up to him before as perhaps something you need to worry about. Sorry, say that again?
It sends a message if nothing else.
Yeah.
This isn't mirrored in or Kaladesh. You're not augmenting creatures.
Yes. Yeah. So, sideboard play is a fine card. I really like the art. Koala, any thoughts?
It's completely fine card. I actually love the art for this. I know that art isn't really what we're reviewing here, but it's very Smite the Monstrous. It does feel weird not having equipment, so stats are going to be kind of what you see is what you get, which makes it like less of a removal spell and definitely moves it more into sideboard range than it is normally. Like, there's a lot of cases in limited formats where even though it doesn't hit everything, I'd still keep this main board because it is removable. Because it will hit something. So that is interesting that it's less powerful. The lack of power and toughness changing effects.
Mm-hmm. Or those that do exist being neg counters. Yeah. So things are getting smaller rather than larger.
Mm.
All right, let's move on. We have the Uruk. How do you pronounce this? Justiciar?
Justicar.
So you ignore the I?
That's not the word Justicar. That's weird.
This is just this is a real word. I looked it up. It's like a Latin thing.
Yeah, well, that's a different word than what I'm used to. So,
weird.
Wow, that is strange.
Justiciar.
There is the aggressive flyer, though.
Yes. So
3 and a wait for a 3/2 human knight flying. As long as another creature has a neg counter on it, it gets first strike.
Yes, and this is very likely to be used as offensive first strike. This is very likely to be used as your flyers cannot block my flyer.
And on that note, though, this concerns me though, since 3 power first strike is really annoying to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't even go over this in the air if they are holding this up to invalidate.
I mean, it's a very powerful reward for the negative counter synergies.
Yeah, like The floor of a 3-2 flyer is decent. There is a shock variant in the format, so it's a lower floor than it normally would be.
Mm-hmm.
2 toughness is a relevant downside.
And like we said before, it's difficult to pump up toughness in this format as well. It's like it's not like you're not putting some sort of like equipment on this and making it just an unkillable, unblockable machine.
Yeah, so I suppose you can deal with this in enough scenarios.
But definitely notable, let's say. Any thoughts, Koala?
I think that it's a totally fine card. It is kind of a powerhouse, but like, if you can't deal with a 3-2 flyer, the 3-2 flyer with first strike isn't so much harder to deal with than just a 3-2 flyer. Where, like, I think it's totally fine. I think it's a fair payoff. I think it's going to get whether or not you trigger the synergy, it's probably going to get removed by about the same things. I guess it depends on how many Academy Drake style 2 power flyers are in the set.
Mm-hmm.
Which I do not know. So it's a good card. Moving on.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Or what you said before though is a little bit more relevant for when it's attacking. So obviously the first strike just makes it just very unblockable. If it's attacking, do you think it's problematic in any ways as a blocker in that situation?
I don't think it's problematic. I mean, yeah, I didn't consider that it's blocking. I guess if I have a 3-2 flyer, it's not going to be staying back to block unless I'm dealing with like a green deck that has like 4 toughness creatures, in which case, like, it's still going to get chumped because. So I don't know enough about the set, but I would guess that I would expect this in most limited environments would spend the majority of its time sideways, to where blocking isn't really something that values in the card. But yes, as a blocker, three power blockers with first strike are quite good.
Yes, and with
seems
flying.
solid. I hope blue-white flyers is a thing, because blue-white flyers is fun. Good to move on.
Yep. So the
Awesome.
last white common, Souls of the Lost. Would you like to read this one, Koala, maybe?
I got this. Yes, it is a sorcery. It is 3 white, so converted mana cost of 5. It says create 3 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. If you control an artifact, you gain 3 life. So it's 3 dudes seriously, which is personally one of my favorite kinds of cards, just because it freaks out Evan Irwin every time he finds them. For context, Evan Irwin runs he has a Magic show called he goes by the name Mr. Orange on YouTube. He has a Magic show, and back during like Lorwyn era, he was doing a card review, and someone posted and he was covering the card the Spectral Procession, which is 2 grid, so it's 2 white, 2 are white, 2 are white, 2 are white. It's part of the 2 grid cycle from Shadowmoor, and it's an uncommon that created 3 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. And he just shat all over the card and was just super negative about it. And then it went on to be like one of the strongest cards in multiples, in both limited and in standard and in extended at the time in its heyday. So like he was just so utterly wrong, and it's I find it quite hilarious. So I'm a huge fan of this effect. I love 3 dudes in the air, super good. Controlling artifacts a nice bonus. I think there's enough artifacts to go around where you'll reliably trigger it. Saves you a little. It's not super big draw. I think I'd play this regardless of how many artifacts I had in my deck. I like it. It's a solid token player.
Yeah. So this does mean that now this is White's 3rd true flyer, and with the 2-drop, White has 3.5 flyers. Something to think about.
Not actually abnormal, I believe.
No, it's not particularly abnormal.
Yeah, at those numbers.
Yeah. I don't really know how to evaluate this. Obviously, it's very flexible. I can imagine the Structures deck just using this as sometimes even just chump blocking fodder, something like that. I know there's a few different effects at Uncommon that or there's like an anthem structure, for example. There's different structures that buff your creatures one by one. You can just swing these in with safe damage. Especially like the 5-drop common structure is something that gives +3/+0 at the beginning of your combat. So just attack with 4/1 flyers, keep the other 2 back to block. Seems like a really reasonable strategy in that kind of deck. I don't see any really problems with it.
I have none.
Cool. And Ruben, of course, coming in here to advocate for the Triplicate Spirits PTSD Association, saying 3/1 white flyers. No, of course, and that's what the conversation has become in the chat. But it's funny. It's like 3/1 white spirits. No.
It's a dangerous number.
Exactly. So looking over white again, there's the aforementioned discussion about where white's flyer power is coming in. It's coming all at the top. The flyers at the low area are very weak, which is just notable. Maybe too harsh of a reaction. Obviously, we have the CMC conflicts here between off of the Doharum and Radiant Glow. Maybe something to diversify a little bit. And let's look at the curve. So the curve for nomads, it stops at 3, which of course white does have mostly low drops. It seems like just a smattering of tiny drops and mid drops for the nomads tribal. That seems about right for what I would expect.
Yeah, like tribal decks don't always want to be creature based, all want to be aggressive, zooey.
Yeah.
That follows.
Yeah. So, any structural problems that we're seeing in white?
2 1-drops is interesting, but not abnormal.
Yes.
Actually, white has a lot of 4-mana cards. I almost want to say too many.
Like 4 mana, just cards in general, not just creatures.
Yeah, like the creature curve is reasonable. I think
Yeah.
the non-creature curve might want to be a little bit
All
lower.
right, because we have Awe and Radiant Glow and Smite the Monsters. I mean, Smite the Monsters is like, it's not a proactive card, so it's not going on a curve, but still.
Heal is already mana smoothing. It's a mana sink.
Yes.
To a degree.
So maybe therefore it's that it's too high of a curve in white's non-creature spells.
Yeah, I think there's an argument for that at least.
Okay. Any thoughts, Koala?
I just want to say I really think that either or both of the 1-drops should be tweaked. I think they're very passable designs. I just think they could be more interesting and more worth running. 1-mana 1/1s are already a trap and limited, and both of the ones here are not ones that I think you should run in most limited decks. I think Bastion Defender I could see you running, but I think that there are steps that can be taken to make them not as much of a trap as they are currently.
Cool. Or I actually think the Bastion Defender is not a trap. It's finicky, but it's like decent.
Bastion Defender, my issue with it isn't so much that it's a trap, but just making it a 0/2 that gets +2/+0 if you control an artifact does pretty much the same.
The previous we talked about the design stuff there.
So I think it's worth moving on to blue now.
Cool.
Yeah, let's move on.
So the first blue common that we should be looking at is Decipher the Runes. Blue for a sorcery. Untap up to 1 artifact or creature. So no target. I assume that's just an error there. Yeah, and then draw a card. So a cheap cantrip.
Nothing, sir.
So more intended to be used in... So blue, obviously, the center of the artifact synergies in the set. We've seen a lot already, but I think blue is going to be the one that has vastly, or the most. And so this is something that's useful both for runic mana synergies, as we'll see, or just for I'm racing, I need my blocker back up, and I'm otherwise trying to keep my cards flowing.
I
It seems
so
low impact.
it like this just isn't a card. This isn't a limited card, and
Yeah,
this isn't e- even like a min-mite where you shouldn't play it in limited, but people do.
because it's
Because
fun.
they should be, if it was an
It
instant
like
speed thing, it would be much more playable and much more interesting to just be like, oh,
well,
I
and
attack.
blue has another cantrip in the set,
Mm.
and this doesn't actually like the untapping an artifact doesn't play to too many themes in it. Like very few artifacts in the set actually have tap abilities you want to reuse. A lot of it are runes from sealed and structures which don't really have
Mm.
tap abilities.
Which
It,
they're being tapped for runic, but it's like that's not the runic abilities tend to be grindier. They tend to be. It's not really
yeah,
worth getting a single untap. You'd rather just
like you're
wait a
trying to
turn.
play Manamorphose
Yeah, you're not trying to
in
speed up that game plan most of the time, I imagine.
it. It's not harming anything, but if there needed to be room made in blue commons to fill something else out, I
Yeah.
would look through it pretty quickly.
See, I like it as just being a bad card on its own, but like is a storm enabler or just a cantrip for for a prowess deck and like custard or something like that. But it's not even an instant speed; it's sorcery speed, which means I don't think it's even playable in that. So like, I'm mad because like it's bad in the one format I'd love to play it in, which or in one format that could be good in because it's generally just going to be a bad card in constructed, because it's bad and limited, and then there is a constructed deck that could use it that it's also bad in because it's not instant speed.
Hmm.
Anyway, we good to move on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go off on this card because this card I both love and hate. It's Runic Translator. It's a 1-mana 1/1 flyer, which is a trap and limited. It's a bird wizard, has flying, and then it has the ability tap. That colorless. You can't spend this mana to cast spells. And my inner Melvin is just like, what the fuck is this card? This card is fantastic. What kind of weird things can I do with it? What happens if you give blue a mana dork? Like, it's really exciting to me for the exact reason why I think it should not be in the set. Because this triggers what? Seal? Is there any other mana sinks that you'd use this with? Other than seal and
When you say seal, you mean sealing a spell?
Yeah.
sealing spells
Use it to pay
seal.
you
Yeah.
can use it to pay for structures.
Oh, structures.
What I actually
There.
don't like about it is that you can't pay runic now.
Yeah, like the flavor and the aesthetics of this card imply that you're using this for runic stuff, but that's not how runic
Literally
works
has
at all.
runic in the name.
Yeah.
I would so much rather this be the like ugly devoid templating thing, or like the what's the card? I can't remember now. There's other cards like it, but it's the add 1 mana of any color. You can only use this for like its specific archetype and its super things. Like,
Yes.
as ugly as that makes the card, I would so much rather see this because this is like a double trap. It's not only a 1/1 flyer for one, which is usually bad and not worth the card. It also is a 1/1 mana dork for one in blue, which means people are going to take it, run 15 lands, and get mana screwed because they have 4 of these and they're never going to be able to use them to actually cast spells. So this card makes me mad for all the wrong reasons, even though there is totally a set that I will design that this would fit perfect in because this is the sort of weird Melvin-y, cute things I love.
Well, I imagine this is honestly a design that just stuck around since before runic mana made itself into the set.
Yeah, like I do read this card actually.
It's a remnant of old times. It's a relic in a set about relics.
Yeah. So moving on, Ancient Insight is 1 into blue for sorcery. Draw 2 cards. Then if Ancient Insight wasn't sealed, discard a card. And of course it has sealed for 2 into blue.
So this is something where, if anyone's familiar with the custom set Lorado, it had a mechanic in it called Reflex, which is in some ways similar to Seal. Because Reflex was there's no upfront cost, but you just pay a different or larger cost to cast the spell at instant speed. And a lot of the things that Shadow Center likes to talk about the mechanic is that the only compelling designs for that were ones that affected the board. So anything that was just like burning the face or just drawing cards, anything that was not affecting the board, there's not as much a difference between sorcery and instant, and people weren't willing to pay the extra cost for that. So here we see that sidestepped by specifically calling out whether or not the card was sealed or not. This isn't just like, oh, you got to do your card selection instant speed. This is, no, your card selection is different. What do we think about that?
I'm genuinely not sure. It feels a little inelegant, but it is evocative. It's not, complex at all, I think. It's not like... I don't think the card has too many moving parts. Honestly, I'm just concerned about the costing, since, as a somewhat casual player, you're going to read this and go, oh, 5 mana for divination.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, like the seal mode is actually like really bad.
Neither mode is great. I would consider pushing the seal to like 1 and a blue. Its seal is just very hard to make appealing, and especially when instant versus sorcery does matter for costing, but not as much as people think. It's just
like there's a lot of spells that you can make instant speed, and it really wouldn't make them that much better.
Like I sympathize with how finicky it is to cost. I just don't think this is desirable as is. I think it's just too like this makes me dislike seal. The way it is costed.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Koala, other than what you said?
I think that saying that this is a 5 mana divination if you seal it is not entirely correct. I think that there is a difference between paying 2 and then 3 mana is not exactly the same as paying 5 mana, because what you could do theoretically is if you're like really starving for, like, if you have, like, you open a hand of 2 copies of this and 5 lands, you can go turn 2 seal this, turn 3 pop your seal, draw 2 cards, and then you're already up. Like, it's not as bad as 5 mana divination is. I do think you should make it cheaper. I just wanted to correct that.
You're just expressing that nuance.
Yes, I was expecting that nuance. I do think, I am curious how sealed plays. It's one of those mechanics that I don't like looking at, like, without the designer eye, but with the designer eye, it's what's the term? More for spells, pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Disprove, I hope it gets printed someday. Are we good to move on?
Let's read the card Disprove.
Yeah, no, I was getting to that. Disprove is a common instant. It's 2 blue mana, so blue. It has until end of turn, target creature gains tap counter target spell. So it's effectively the same as like a counter spell that requires you to tap a creature. Because I think that's how the gameplay is going to be like 90% of the time. But it's a fixed counter spell that I don't think is broken. And the name is very fitting. It's one of the few. Is this a reprint? This isn't a reprint, is it? Because I could be wrong. It could be a reprint. I like the name Disprove.
It is not a reprint.
Yep, I like it. It's a good way to make counter spells that are good in. It's a very solid counterspell in limited without being broken and constructed. I think that making the tap out or the
requiring a creature is much less of a condition in limited, is what you're saying.
And Uh, I in I appreciate it as a like just for being more powerful than it looks. Like tapping a creature is 99% of the time more of a cost than paying a mana. Actually, uh,
I
so for that reason, I think it, or I, oh no, I enjoy this as a card that will teach people that it's often worse than cancel. I
Hmm.
enjoy uh, cards with inbuilt teaching them.
Righto.
I don't think that's as true in limited. Like, I think I could see that being the case. Like in constructed, you have to actually think about how you play this, but I think in limited there's enough times where like, oh, you have a blocker, they attacked with it, you block with your creature for the turn, and then they second main phase try to cast something, and you're like, disprove, tap my own blocker sort of things. That's better than it just being it. So I could be wrong though. I really like it.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on. So next we have Explorer's Intuition. It's 1 and a blue for an aura. Enchanted creature can't be blocked. And sacrifice it to return the enchanted creature to its owner's hand. So this lets you, if you have a big creature on board, you make it unblockable. They try to murder it, not in response to you casting the aura. It doesn't help you there. But once it's on the creature, and you're using it to hit them in the face, they're trying to murder it. You say, no, it does not get murdered. I get my creature back. So infinitely more valuable on large things where you're going to want to play them again, or anything with like an ETB or LTB effect.
Yeah, I really enjoy the design. I like just bread and butter corset-esque.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I don't think it's pulling any particular weight, but it's a generically nice card.
I,
That
I
isn't
think it's a flavor win.
You think the flavor what?
win.
A flavor win. It's like,
Ah.
oh, you put it on your creature, it goes exploring, and then your explorer's intuition is like, yeah, I should not be here, and you just
Yes, like
You just kick it out.
I'm exploring these ruins. What was that noise? I should really get out of here.
The
Yeah, I like
only
that.
thing I would like to note is the art very clearly has an elf, which I believe is not something Doharum is trying to push in blue particularly.
Oh,
Not a
okay.
big deal, but
Something to note, something to think about.
yeah, something I wanted to communicate to pass the chips.
Righto, something to think about.
Yeah.
All right, the next card we have Keep It Bay.
Keep it
I'm
bay
gonna
is
have
one
to
in
go
the
AFK
blue.
in just a second. Figured I'd warn you.
Okay.
Keep it bay is one in the blue for an instant. Creatures their opponents control get -1, -0 until end of turn. Draw a card. This is the other cantrip that I was hinting at. Doharum, I believe, is trying to push for the white-blue slow artifacts deck, and
Mm-hmm.
this can kind of do that. It can just swing combat math in your favor and
Yeah.
have somebody walk into trades.
And especially with when you're playing structures, that's kind of like a, hey, opponent, attack the structure. You really want to. Ha ha! Your creatures are tiny now. So I can imagine that doing good stuff in that situation. Obviously, like it's not always, or how do I say this? It's being -1, -0 means that in most combat situations, it's not likely to do a crazy amount of stuff because you want to be turning situations where the opponent is going to be trading with your creatures into where your creature is now just killing theirs. So normally this would be a little like kind of hard to make use out of in most living environments, but with the fact that it is being done with structures, if you're blocking some of their creatures and letting some of their creatures through at your structure, just depending on how the combat math works out for how you want to get the most value out of that, you say, okay, well now I win these engagements and I prevent this damage to my structure. Because preventing the damage to your life total wouldn't really be worth it. But if they're like, oh, well, now there's 2 more loyalty stability counters on the structure than there would have normally been, that actually works out pretty nicely.
Well, also, this just turns 3/2s into 2/2s, 2/2s into, 1/2s.
Right.
which can really swing trades in your like this almost concerns me with how it might be able to generate gross advantage for common.
Mm. You're thinking like a something that was constrained to like 2 target creatures or something like that, just to
Yeah,
avoid because yeah, you can
like
get blowouts with this card.
and turn the tide, which is 1 in the blue creatures their opponents control get two nego, wasn't great in limited, but it didn't cantrip.
Mm-hmm.
Like that.
This is a much
Uh,
lower opportunity cost.
I don't even mean this is too powerful, but like the ceiling is particularly high here.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think maybe up to 2 or something would be
Numbers can shift around here.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Cool. Let's
Yeah.
move on
One
to
of
the
those.
Teltor Ruin Diver. It is 1 in a blue for a 2/1 classic piker creature human rogue, and has an ability for runic and tap it. You draw a card, then discard a card. Runic, of course, is the artifact mana that we were talking about before.
I see you, Wayne Reynolds. Yeah. To higher skill players, they will appreciate the looting a lot more, and I don't. I'm not sure how much the set is trying to push runic as something appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, because we've talked about before about how there might be some issues with appearance in terms of people, like especially like we were talking about maybe less design-focused players just coming in from just like playing Magic, going, this is just improvise, right? And improvise is very enjoyed, so they might come in
and
with a already not enjoying Runic as much as they should.
and if runic is just pulling weight and structures, seal is what's supposed to be appealing. Just having the spikier upside is like completely fine. I
Mhm.
really appreciate the numbers here, actually.
Yes, like I think this is a solid design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But
I
in terms of appearances, in terms of like appealing towards other players, maybe something to think about.
yeah.
You know.
I would like to note though, uh, apostrophes make pronouncing your card names very annoying, and
Ah,
you. This is different from the white card with an apostrophe.
it
You have
is.
2 apostrophe locations.
Yeah. So
I
and
would
actually
absolutely not do that.
in this situation, I've just completely ignored the apostrophe here in terms of pronunciation. If this is actually intended to be pronounced in a certain way, I think it is therefore useless. I just like call this Teltor, right? And that's the exact way I would pronounce it if it wasn't
Yeah.
there as well. There could be a hyphen. There could just be, I don't know, like a space wouldn't really work. It's probably just really not necessary.
Might feel gimmicky to feel.
Yeah,
See
I mean,
people
it's like it evokes like the classic, like the '80s sci-fi kind of stuff that is a little bit present here already.
Yeah, like I'm reminded of bad D&D characters who have apostrophes instead of personality, which I am not accusing Doharum of that at all. Like Doharum has
But
a lot of
it
personality.
reminds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next card. Is that fun?
Yep.
Hidden Knowledge, tuned to blue for an instant. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
How does this compare with the numbers on Forbidden Alchemy? So Forbidden Alchemy was top 4 and had flashback. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And prohibitively costed flashback.
Of course, but it's like it's one of those things where it's like it like the two trade off. I think
Yeah, they
Yeah.
they trade off.
this is a strong card
I believe
in certain constructive
this
strategies.
is a reprint of another card.
Oh, it
by the
is.
way.
This is a functional reprint.
I think so. I'm gonna check Scryfall now.
I'm
Okay, it's not an actual
not sure if I
reprint, but it could be
appreciate
functional.
this if the set doesn't have a graveyard theme,
Mm-hmm.
which at least in blue commons it doesn't.
It hasn't so far.
It's just very clunky,
Yeah.
and if I'm not
Like
caring
this
about
is
the
actually like a lot of self mill. Like if you play 2 of these in a
Yeah.
game, and it'll particularly like you could kill yourself, and that's just like I did that for no benefit.
Yeah, 2 of these is a quarter of your deck.
Yeah. So it's something to think about. Obviously, it's like flavorful. It's like it feels right for the set, but obviously, yeah, if it isn't actually doing anything, it's probably not necessary. One thing to note here: there's some miscropping. There's a big old black sidebar there. Not actually very noticeable because your eye kind of just reads it as shadow at first, so that's really funny. But yeah, get that fixed. All right.
So it's actually a strictly better version of an uncommon from M14 called Glimpse the Future, which is 2 and a blue sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
So Glimpse the Future was trash garbage. and
Oh, yeah, no, this
I'm
card
happy
is
with the
horrible.
Glimpse
Oh
the
my
Future.
goodness. Yeah, it's probably fine.
Koala, do you like to read Intrepidix, Lore Secret?
Well, the thing that's interesting to me is even if Glimpse the Future was a light, is that this is instant speed 5 rather than 3, and a common, which means you're going to see a lot more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a win to a card. So anyway,
Yeah, like it's a powerful
yes,
card.
Next card. Intrepid Lore Seeker. So this is basically a 3-mana 1/1 Snapcaster Mage, as far as I'm concerned. No, it's not that great. It's 3. It's a 1 blue blue blue, or sorry, 1 blue blue. Creature, human wizard. It's a 1/1. Has when it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand.
So this is the synergy we were looking for with Hidden Knowledge.
That's true.
Right?
Man, remember when Archaeomancer was a good card?
Yeah.
Remember when it wasn't? It's still a good card.
It's this. Like this is like I understand that me saying Snapcaster Mage was kind of hyperbolic, but this is almost exactly. This is sorcery speed Snapcaster Mage, but better.
Archaeomancer is a good 4-mana 1/2. This is the same. Like the 2 toughness is not why Archaeomancer is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this feels like it should either cost 4 or be an uncommon, just because I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, and Archaeomancer as a name is like really fitting for the set as well. Right? There's so much archaeology going on here, so this seems like just unnecessary. I mean, if he's trying to push some sort of constructed thing, maybe, but it's like this is kind of warping in a certain sense to a limited environment. Just like it makes all your instant sorceries so much better.
So easy to Snapcast a murder.
Absolutely. I don't know. It just like it does. It's limited weirdness. Limited weirdness. Let's move on to the Secret Hoarder. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 creature mutant wizard. When it enters the battlefield, for each kind of counter on target permanent, put another counter of that kind on it, or remove 1 from it. So in the set, this can be doing stuff with -1 counters, so you can exacerbate negative counters on an opponent's creature to remove them from your own, or with structures which have stability counters, you can add them to your own, remove them from your opponent's. This is rather weird.
Was the Amonkhet Proliferate Camel a common?
What was that called?
I do not.
Is Camel a type?
Yes.
It is. Quarry Hauler. Oh, it was. We're good. It was a common.
Okay. And it was a 4/3. Yeah. So it was even on curve.
Yeah. I mean, this has like more. This has more to interact with than I think than in Amonkhet, because Amonkhet it was what. Brick counters.
And those
like,
were
whatever.
for the most part less playable than structure.
Like this is I think still just as good for white blue structures or like blue black counters or something like that, if that's a thing.
it being a mutant wizard is kind of a weird message.
It is.
And
I think it's probably just more based on the art.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Thoughts, Koala? Or did he?
I was trying to find what the set code was for Amonkhet.
Oh,
That's fine. I have Scryfall up in here, and I've
No,
just been.
I realized there was a gap in my knowledge. I like it. I want it to be for each permanent on the battlefield
No.
proliferate, but you can't do that.
That'd be way
That
too
would be-
good.
It would be way too good. It would not be a common, and it would probably break other things. But I love ETB proliferate. I'm always a fan of.
Righto. Expect to be seeing this card. All right, let's move on. We have Stasis Chamber. You want to read that, Simon?
Yeah, it's tuned blue for an aura enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, and it has seal for 1 and a blue. I actually really enjoy the costing on this. Bonds of Quicksilver is a very fair card, but is nowhere near the ceiling. Bonds of Quicksilver is enchanted creature doesn't untap, flash for 3 and a blue. The flexibility here is very clear since it doesn't tap the creature itself. It quite easily communicates that, instant speed, you can get a creature while it's attacking, or after it attacks. I think this is a good use of seal.
I really, really like this design.
Yeah, this makes a case for seal.
I think it too.
It also just feels really good because it's a kind of gameplay that blue doesn't get like a whole lot of, especially when white is typically getting the your attacking creature's dead now kind of effects. It's your opponent attacks. Ha ha! Stasis Chamber was sealed. You activated my trap card. Love any kind of design that's really able to get that happen.
One thing that makes it, I would say, distinct from Reflex here is this makes every seal a potential stasis chamber.
Right, and this is something we haven't talked about yet. The fact that it is acting like Morph is a huge part of Pass the Chips design intent with the set. Like, he has a very he has a very large number of seals at common. I think it's 2 per color, and that is to make that kind of the Morph, I don't know what's underneath this, it could be this, it could be that kind of gameplay really happen. So yeah, any strong seal designs make other seal cards better. You know what I mean?
Especially when you have to hold up less mana.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're saying, I'm only holding up 1 and a blue. I can just bluff holding up 1 and a blue, even if the seal spell that I have on the battlefield actually costs 4 mana to play, and my opponent is in some ways desiring to play around Stasis Chamber, which is really cool.
Yeah, I like it. It's solid. It's just solid. We should move on probably.
Cool. The next one is Dune Predator. 3 and a blue for a 2/4 creature. It's a fish beast. I think that's a little unnecessary.
Why is this not a shark?
Shark is not a type. I made that mistake
really
as well.
not?
Yeah, I really thought it was, and it is not. They're fish. And this creature has flash. So it's a 4 mana 2/4 with flash in blue. Just kind of like hey, I have a wall that you didn't know about.
Obviously plays well with seal as a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
So having a flash creature is super reasonable, and pushing it towards a defensive stat line so it wields across the table is also very reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have too much to add.
Yeah, I really enjoy it with structures as well, because they're like, hey, I can attack into the structure. No, you can't. Here's a shark.
Mm.
Just it's a really great tempo gain. in that situation, even if you don't kill their creature. Like still just like messing up their game plans by making them make the wrong attack and have it not even be a useful attack is like really it's interesting and good. So I enjoy that. Especially because I think blue-black seal is like a big thing. Like blue-black control, like very grindy defensive seal is a big thing here. So plays just right into that.
So I don't like this card, mostly because I don't like blue-black. Playing against blue-black control, and this is a card I will criminally undervalue when I draft it, and then it will eat me, and I will not be happy about it when I lose to it in limited because I forget it exists. So I don't like this card, but I can't say that it's bad from a design perspective. It probably means it's very good from a design perspective. It's just one of those pseudo-grown testers to where if there's too many, if this is too prevalent as a thing, I could see...
you could see it being a little boring if people are playing it too much.
Yeah, I could see it being a little... Just see it creating these board stalls. So I'm a little worried that there's not enough aggro to really...
To make this, like, important in a role-playing sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I agree with you. So obviously we talked a little bit about White's curve and what's aggressively happening over there, and that's something that I've brought up with Pass the Chips before, and something that I think we will probably be coming back to a little bit more over the whole of this set is like, where's the aggression? You know, obviously you don't expect to see a whole lot of that in blue, but
White only has a few aggressive tools, and blue's best aggressive card is a piker, which wants to tap itself. Like, and we're only looking at 2 of the 3 colors. Black-red has a whole keyword that wants you to attack with creatures. So this isn't amazingly representative, but it is something to think about.
Yeah.
I think we can move on to the next card now.
We have Rune Warder. Would you like to read this, Koala?
I got this, yes. Rune Warder, it's 2 blue. It's a creature, bird, wizard with flying. It's a 3/2, so it's already pretty solid in limited. I'm a huge fan of 3/2 flyers for 4 mana in limited. It also has, when Rune Warder attacks, you may pay yellow. If you do, target creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn. Yellow is a weird sort of quasi-mana symbol.
We've talked about it a little bit before. Runic mana.
I'm not sure what you called it, so I want to be clear. It's the same as whatever you called it.
I think, well, okay, so actually I guess that's a little strange, right? Because it's like nothing about these cards say what this is called. I didn't actually think about this. That might be a mistake. Yeah, maybe the reminder should say this is runic mana. But that's what we've been calling it.
Phyrexian mana, the flavor was very in your face about it being Phyrexian.
Yeah.
And it's not here.
I mean, like Rune Warder being in the name and in the art and all the other rune spells sometimes.
That's kind of just the whole set, though. Like, we
Yeah.
talked about how earlier there was the runic translator, which did nothing with the mechanic. Or artifacts, even. As for the card itself,
It's strange.
I really don't like this.
Yeah.
Like, it is... when this is turned on, it is really obscenely hard to deal with.
It's another, because just like with the white flyer at 4 mana, this is just another aggressively statted, solid flying body that also makes it so that your opponent doesn't get to do things.
Yeah, I'm like really curious how good Blue White Flyers is in limited, because it just seems like at common that deck is insane, especially with the next card being a 4 mana or 5 mana 3/4 flyer. That's going to be really interesting. I also don't like how it's a like sleep, not sleep. What's the slang term for it? It's a
Hydroblast or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a hydroblast effect, but it's it's only on when I'm attacking. Usually, I want my Hydroblast to be when I'm blocking, or like when
I
my
mean,
opponent's
especially when it's like
Good
totally
answer.
possible that you're only desiring to attack with this. Like if you have a board of non-flyers and this, you only really want to attack with this.
It
Like
does
it's
just
so weird.
you give their only thing in there neg 3 nego and it can't be traded with. That's the primary reason I really dislike this. It creates very snowbally gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
It, I think we can move on to
Yeah.
Ash.
Ashkal is what I've been saying.
Ashkal of Ever Seekers. 4 into blue for a 3/4 human nomad with flying.
Just kind of a stock flying body.
Yep. It being a nomad is, or it should be noted, the art actually doesn't read like a creature, which concerns me.
Mm-hmm.
It is mostly landscape.
Yeah.
So on
It's cool,
board,
but it's not really a creature. And like I'll agree with you. This is I never would have looked at this and said nomad. This is something I told him before, but I would look at this and say, if you just show me this art, I would say it's a scout. Like you'd ask me 100 times, and I would say scout. So there's just another issue with the nomad theme and the art direction in this capacity that really I think needs to be solved. Yeah. Any thoughts, Koala?
It's a solid card. It makes me worried about how good blue-white flyers is.
Oh, right, because you
be.
were saying with this very strong flyer and this, like I wouldn't say Everseekers is like a very strong flyer. It's a little bit beefier than we normally see in blue flyers, which makes it like harder to interact with.
It's like the thing is that it really comes down to how many removal spells can kill it. Because even like the white common removal spell, that's the put 3 -1/-1
makes it
counters,
a 0/1. Well, it makes it a 0/1, which is dead.
Which yeah, it does kill it, but like it feels like it doesn't, and like I can totally see people missing that would kill it.
Yeah.
Just because of the unintuitiveness of that particular interaction, which means it's not going to be like it's a solid thing. It really nerfs attacking your opponent attacking you. It swings in the air. It's going to chip you for 3. It's just very solid. I think that as long as there's removal spells, as long as there's a removal spell that deals with it in each color, it should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if this misses, like if this for some reason isn't affected, isn't killable in red by at all, like because green I don't think is likely to be able to handle this because of green usually lacking in its fight effects. I don't know.
I mean, it does have flying though.
Yeah, but like,
I'm saying green can kill it in that way.
Oh, because it can. Oh, because green has reach.
It is reach, and it probably has like a plummet effect.
I have green open right now. Looking through. Okay, it has a common reach creature that can deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
It has a fight spell which allows it to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a reach combat trick which will allow it to deal with this.
Yeah, so green totally can.
It has
and if I remember correctly, the red's largest removal spell is 5 mana instant 4 to any target, which just hits this as is. So, and like we said before, there's not really Voltron at all in this format. Like we didn't even see like a buff aura in white, did we?
No.
No, and blues doesn't give any power of toughness either. So this is just a 3/4 that gets murdered by the removal in the format. Luckily, still a little weird though. Cool. Do we want to move on?
Yeah.
Tomb Serpent. It's 5 and a blue for a 6/6, our classic large serpent in blue. It can't attack unless a permanent entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So, this can be landfall. This can be sealing a spell. This can be just playing any sort of creature or artifact that's in your hand. So actually, among many serpents, this is pretty easy to turn on. Like every card you draw is likely to activate this, right?
Yeah, even the non-creature spells are permanents with seal.
Yeah. Obviously, the 6-mana 6/6 blue creature is never usually like a massive part of blue's identity in a set, I think. But in this case, this seems
Except when
honestly
it's
pretty solid.
super close.
Oh,
Like,
right, of
remember the unblockable or the one with affinity in Koala.
Gear Seeker Serpent, yeah.
Yeah, pay to make unblockable was famously annoying to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't like this can still get trump blocked. It's still,
Yeah.
Like I think it's reasonably testable.
Yeah, I like the design. It's a fine power level. Yeah.
Yeah. Unraveling reality. Oof, not reality. 4 blue for sorcery. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hand. Seal 3 blue.
So, what a way to win a game.
That was one of the most backbreaking cards in Theros.
Yeah, this card seems just really, really good. Just a absolutely fantastic way for blue decks to swing out to win the game. Like having seal for 5 is like the difference between 6 and 5 here is actually very, very relevant, especially with the fact that it is now instant speed. Like the ability to do this on your opponent's end step, like they don't have the chance to play them again or something.
Yeah.
Like, and you're reacting to whatever they played during that turn, or heaven forbid they go to like they put a combat trick on. They're attacking into you and they combat trick. You're just like bounce your dudes.
This is comparable to Floodwaters and Amonkhet, which was the same thing, but instead of runic, it had cycling for 2 generic. Yeah, this is it being able to be done at instant seriously concerns me for it being common. That aside, it does create tension with sealed cards.
Yeah, I think that's why it is justifiable, because it's like a scary seal spell that people will be thinking about. You know, you'll get like it's one of those things where we say we don't like it at common because it blows people out, but we do like it for seal because it blows people out. You know what I mean?
I also think that this is good because I think it is a solid limited blowout at common that like is still hard enough to activate to where it just kind of brings you the set closer to that pauper side of Prince versus Pauper formats in limited, and I think that's overall a good thing. I think it's good to have solid common and uncommon spells.
Cool. So I'm happy with this. So that is blue. I'm going to take a short break, like a minute. In the meanwhile, you guys can just continue to talk, maybe a little bit about what we've seen so far or what we will be about to see.
I'm looking at blue's curve right now. It has like 4 3-drops. 2 of those are creatures, which isn't abnormal at all. Blue has a lot of color weight, actually. I think because there's Disprove and and Rune Warder and Unraveling Reality both have double blue color weight. I'm not sure if that's abnormal, actually. Just for example. And one of them being the counterspell of the set.
Yeah. Is having only one blue piker at common standard for sets?
Is that the only 2-drop creature in blue?
Yeah, that is. That seems weird to me.
That is actually abnormal, and could be a concern. Wow, and that makes it so much harder for the Runic deck to pick it up, actually, since every blue deck will want it, just because it is the only 2-drop they can find. That's a real concern. Yeah, like blue had 2 4-drop creatures, a 5-drop creature, a 6-drop creature. One of those might want to be turned into a 2-drop to help out its curve a bit.
Okay, I'm back. So we're talking about Blue's Curve.
Yeah.
It did seem a little
Blue
long.
only
Yeah.
has 1 2-mana creature, which
That.
is quite concerning.
I mean, like a part of this is just like Runic Translator being a non-card, right?
Yeah, like almost every 1-drop in limited is a non-card.
Yeah. And I think Blue just has so little creature slots as to not be able to sustain that, really. Yeah, I mean, how many actual creatures does it have?
I did not count that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
There's 8.
6, 7, 8. Okay.
So a part of that is like the massive amount of artifact creatures that are at common. So that's something to think
That's
about.
true.
But I think definitely this is a part of why, because during the last draft or last two, Past the Chips was remarking on the fact that Blue was like underdrafted and he was just getting all the cards for it and no one was drafting it. I think this is why.
It is. I'm looking at the artifact creatures now. 2 of the artifact creatures with power are 2-drops.
Mm-hmm.
So there are tools to fill out your curve a bit.
Yeah.
Among
Oh,
the colorless cards.
and Casualar
none of
has
those-
a. Sorry.
None of those, notably, are the artifact creatures that ask you to be a certain color. They're just generic artifact creatures.
Mm-hmm.
What does Casualar have?
He was saying that Disprove is a little strange in a blue that is like even less light on creatures than it normally is. And just because it is asking you to have creatures, but there aren't creatures to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I just did the research based on Amonkhet and Hour, because that's what I had open. They both have 2-drop blue creatures at common in their sets.
And the artifacts are eating that space a little bit, so blue has been underperforming. Also, looking at a few recent sets in standard, the color weight here is abnormal. Blue normally
Blue,
has like 3 cards that have
Intrepid Lore Seekers double blue, Rune Warders double blue, and Tomb Serpent isn't. Normally, it's the serpent that is, right?
There's 1 extra card that is double blue here.
I think Unraveling Reality being double blue is absolutely correct. But
yeah, it's just something else that can contribute to being underdrafted.
So there are no 2-drop flyers in the set, like no true flyers.
Yeah, there's the conditional white one, but that is it.
That is very weird.
I think that's defensible since you want the gameplay of defending your structure to happen, and flying can be very
true. It's true.
3 mana is enough to have it be a threat, but that's not attacking for turn 4, so you can prepare.
Yeah, but then the only 3 mana flyer that exists that we've seen so far is just a complete wash.
I do think that one might want to be buffed, and another flyer in white docked down a bit.
Yeah. So
there's currently 15 CMC2 creatures in standard, by the way. One of which it's really more 14, and I think there's 7 sets in standard, so it looks like the average is about 2%.
2 blue, 2 drops per set?
2 blue, 2 drops.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the
Yeah.
and the people in the stream are pointing out also that it's a little weird that blue doesn't have a structure cares about card. You kind of just like you'd expect that. Well, because we've been talking about white blue structures as a thing. Obviously we could be wrong as to the extent to which that is supposed to be the case, but I can totally see that being an important part.
Although it doesn't have anything that explicitly cares, it does still have a runic, which and the runic very much makes structures nicer since they actually do something for your tempo.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, it's totally white blue flyers. I think with having those two very powerful flyers at common, like if there's anything at above that's a solid flyer.
And at uncommon,
What that
it does have cards that care about structures, so that has support at a different rarity. I think we
Yeah.
can move on to black now.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, look it is. It's our good
Yeah.
friend, the apostrophe, surrounded by 3 letters on the left and 3 letters on the right. Woohoo!
Killing nature.
Awesome. So I just want to say, as the resident former collected company infinite combo modern player, why does this have to have that 2 mana cost? That pay 2 cost? Why can it not just be sack a creature gets +2/+0?
Let's read the card.
Right, sorry. It's Ankar Militant. It's a creature, insect, warrior at common. It's a 1-mana 1/1, which are usually bad. This one has Menace, which is pretty good on a 1-drop. It has pay 2, sacrifice a creature. It gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
So this is pushing the green-black insects flavored sacrifice deck.
Yeah.
And I think it's just another situation where it's just too bad.
Well, I don't know.
Think?
Like, bad cards, they make drafting easier and to take less time with.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying is like when this is very clearly there's a lot of text put on here to make it seem like that's supposed to be part of that deck.
It's
You know?
also a case for like it is niche support if you're really digging for non-seal cards that sacrifice creatures. I think it's defensible to have it be bad so you can last pick this a lot
It's
of
true.
the time. Like it, and depending on the synergies, just 2 mana sacrifice a creature at
Could
any
be valuable.
time to buff it can be reasonably useful.
And Arshig, there's the classic like Blood Baron and Tuco Husk kind of cards. Those are frequently common.
True.
I honestly do think this could remove the pay 2 cost and be totally fine as a card.
I would just put it down to 1 if I did anything, or black.
Yeah,
Maybe black
in
sacrifice a creature.
constructed 1 mana aristocrats are a little too much, but like for the sake of limited, making it a single generic or black, both are super decent. Fate of the week is black for an instant. Put a neg1 counter on target creature. If that creature had a counter on it, destroy it instead. I actually prefer the templating for this in Vast Doom, which was
it a choose one? Yeah.
Which reads a bit clearer.
Because it doesn't have
I'll be right back, guys.
Okay. Because it doesn't have to have that if instead wording, which is always a little awkward on cards.
And like if counting for it just reads really weirdly here, since if it had another counter on it, it's almost out feels.
Yeah.
As for the card, players really enjoy this effect.
Yes.
I remember in Vastoon testing, almost everybody has stopped to say that they enjoy, in that set, I believe it's called Atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how I feel about it here, since there are cards that put in white that put counters on your own creatures. So I'm not sure how I feel about punishing it and rewarding it. In the sense that,
this is another thing that we've talked about before, which is the idea that I would call it like the Doharum needs to find the identity for -1 counters in the set. Like we saw with Amonkhet, it was always either where I'm using it as a removal or I'm putting it as my own creatures and I'm removing them from my creatures. It didn't reward you for putting them on your opponent's creatures. It didn't. I think it didn't reward you for putting them on your own, or did it? I think it was like a few, maybe one card or something.
I believe a few.
Okay.
That rewarded you for removing them from creatures, like the black-green signpost in
the uncommon.
In one of the
because I was gonna say the first one didn't actually have to remove a counter for it to put the counter, so it actually wasn't a reward.
Oh, never mind then. My mistake.
Yeah, but it wasn't if you do.
And I hate to compare it to a custom set. In Vestum, it is only your opponent's creatures, and I believe he's moving a little bit away from rewarding you from that even.
Yeah, so definitely something like because using them willy-nilly is a recipe for like feel bads and for just really weird situations.
I'm not sure what they're supposed to be here.
Yeah, exactly.
-1 counters are a mechanical statement, unlike plus counters, and it just forces your hand with them, where you have to do something with them, have an outline for them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely another one of those situations where, because this is another thing I've talked to Pass the Chips before about, which is the fact that there's a lot of themes that are in the set that are very developmentally warping, and this is one of the situations where the -1 counter stuff hasn't had an opportunity to bake into its warp yet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of still amorphous, and that's going to cause problems in the future with moving stuff around.
Did we want to move to the next card?
We have Time Lost Power. It is black for a sorcery. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. And Seal for black.
You know why I hate this, Sue?
Why?
I feel like you would know why. Indestructible granting in a set with negative counters.
Well, that's part of it, yes. Like, that is very awkward, because it's like, oh, I go to kill your creature. Haha, I save it.
Like, there's a reason Amonkhet has natural stamina, which granted, when it dies, return it.
Yeah. It was returned to the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
No.
I definitely think that would be a good fix to this, just because,
I think black. I think he has another. He has an effect like that in black right now. I think this is just another example of just like needing to still play around more with different seal black designs.
I think it also goes to he isn't allowing the counters to warp the design enough.
Mm-hmm. He's just kind of letting things be what they are, but that's, once again, like you said, going to cause problems.
Yeah. Koala, would you like to read the next card?
Delve. That's probably one of my favorite words in Magic history. Into the Crypts. It's 1 and a black. It's 2 mana for a common instant. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature or artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. I like it. I like it less that it says Delve and doesn't have Delve on it, but that's okay. Delve is broken.
So, when I first saw this a few days ago, I told Pass the Chips that I was concerned about it being a better corpse turn, but like that corpse turn is nowhere near the ceiling, is what I realized later, since green has a better corpse turn. Even I don't remember the name, but that's not the point. So it's a reasonable upside from what I can tell, pushing the sub-theme.
Yeah, it's just like that other blue spell we looked at before. It's a little weird that it self-mills. When I'm looking at the archetypes, there just isn't graveyard themes in this set at all, really. Like, just, cards, of course. but it's kind of weird. And obviously, like returning artifacts, that's a set specific bend for black.
Is it worth noting that returning artifacts could make the gameplay? How does it interact with the gameplay structures? I'll ask that.
I think the interesting part about structures is that they can be destroyed. So saying, "Hey, my structure was destroyed. I get it back now," is still interacting in that area. So I personally enjoy that. I don't as much enjoy, like, I wouldn't enjoy a design that was like, your structures are indestructible. Like, I would say, like, what's the point? But this is like, it's dead. I'm getting it again.
Bringing it back plays into them dying rather than making it trivial. You would say.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that. Cool, let's move on.
Yeah.
Enslaved Laborer. We have 1 and a black for a 3/3 creature. It's a Viashino, which I don't think we've seen yet in the set. And when it enters the battlefield, put a neg1 counter on it. My first thoughts are, so already mentioned, Viashino, interesting. I really hope, I enjoy Viashino. I hope that this is something that is actually like occurring throughout the rest of the set, that we're not just seeing it on like 2 cards or something like that. That would be it.
Looking real quick, it's the only Viashino at common.
It's the only Viashino at common. I mean, obviously, maybe this is one of the things that like flavor text would explain or something like that. Like, well, whatever. We're not here for flavor concerns that much. But yeah, it definitely also seems like it wants to enter with the neg counter on it, rather than anything else. I don't see... I can't think of a reason right now for why it would be templated
like
this way.
No triggers with put a counter on a creature.
Yeah. Like maybe with like the combat trick in white? Because then that would need to be... Because then they don't... Because it wouldn't enter with 2 neg counters, but that seems just like unnecessary. I don't know. Otherwise, it's a 2/2 that it's a bear that turns on your own -1/-1 counter synergies. So this is a very, very, like, I just think it's solid design for if there is a deck that is saying we are putting neg counters on our own creatures. But like we said before, that seems to be in flux, let's say.
I also think this design would be a lot better if it was put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control.
Right. That's the Amonkhet thing they did there. I think there's value in being different than Amonkhet in that regard.
So quick search. There's one other Viashino in the set. It is a blue-red wizard at rare.
Okay.
So this card, it plays into more neg counter confusion. Like, I have this as a visual spoiler and seeing it right below Fate of the Week.
It's really feel bad in a lot of ways. Yeah. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I enabling... Or like, oh my god, playing this into the 4-mana 3/2 flyer and giving it first strike? You're just like, this is absurd. This is awful.
But if your opponent has that creature...
It's like, no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. When you play it into your opponent having it, it's just like, this is horrendous.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry I played a bear.
Yeah.
Why should I play 2 drops into Doharum? Blue only has 1 of those. Clearly,
Alright, so as for the flavor thing, I would love to see more Viashinos. Don't know if that's something that Past the Chips Art resources enable, but it seems really cool, really fitting, cool way to differentiate the project from other stuff.
Enslaved is a little intense just to put in the card name, but it's fitting for the...
It is, yeah. That's the kind of dark
and it's not a
stuff
human, which helps.
Oh, you're one of those speciesists, eh?
When your audience is human.
I mean, it would make sense. I'm a speciesist, but that's because I'm a motherfucking koala.
Anyway.
Let's move on.
Yeah, Ladar Raiders, 1 in the black for a 2/1 human warrior with Warband. I
So this is
believe
the
this is
first
the
time
first
we've seen
we've
Warband, yeah.
it. So Warband is whenever this creature attacks, if it's unpaired, you may pair it with an unpaired attacking creature you control until end of turn. So it has appeared in Lorado. It's kind of like Soul until end of turn Soul Bond for attacking.
Yeah, and to clarify, it was Lorado took the mechanic from this set, if anyone was wondering.
Yes, it's just
This set is
Lorado
old.
finished a little quicker.
Yeah.
That's just how old Doharum is.
Yeah.
And
Which is flavorful.
Whenever Ladar Raiders becomes paired with a creature, both creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. So
if you were planning on attacking with this creature a lot, and you are planning on going wide with aggressive creatures, it effectively is a piker with Death Touch that gives something else Death Touch.
Yeah.
Right?
And this was the mechanic that we were talking about earlier, why having the 2/2 defender that can attack on condition, being an 0/2 that gets +2/+0 on condition. That's why that would be a significant change, because with Warband, you could attack with the 0/2.
Right. Well, it wouldn't make a difference in this case, because giving a Death Touch to a 0-power creature doesn't do anything, but on other Warband
it would give
creatures.
the Raiders Death Touch.
Oh, right. No, so yeah, it still would do something.
It itself doesn't have Death Touch yet.
Yeah.
As a card, I think it's like it makes 2 creatures really annoying to block and deal with. I think that's fine and good.
Yep. I love this design.
The numbers are fine. I don't really love the art, since the focus is on an action. It's on like somebody defending against the Raiders. It doesn't read like a creature to me. It's not like, I don't think it's going to be too confusing on the battlefield. It's not a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can move on.
Any thoughts, Koala?
Not really, no.
Okay. Yeah, so the Relic Channeler. It is 1 in a black for a 1/3 creature human wizard. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So this is going into any kind of grindy, black-based artifact deck that's wanting to use this as a blocker, keep ETBing with artifacts, drain the opponent out as either a win condition, if you're really crazy, or mostly as just a way to continually keep yourself alive. Seemingly, that would be mostly the blue-black seal control deck.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a fine, like it wheels very easily. It doesn't bring you into a defensive deck. It's a good tool for that.
I also like the combo potential for it in a constructed format. That excites me.
It does. I do think it's worth noting it's a wizard, not an artificer. Not that it's tribal for either of those types, but might want to be looked into.
Also, just a side comment on the art. This art is a little too risque for at least my personal tastes. I know we are quite limited in this community as to what art we have available, but I personally would like something a little less flashy.
Well, artifacts don't appreciate you unless you show some skin, you know? I think we can move on to Onkar Bombarder.
Onkar? That is weird.
Onkaret?
Ah!
And that's how we turn Doharum into Amonkhet again.
Yeah.
You want to read this?
So I was going to read it. This is Onkar Bombardier. It's 3 mana, it's 2 in a black for a 2/1 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a permanent. If you do, create 2 1/1 green insect creature tokens, and it's an insect itself.
I think that's actually way too much value for common with such a high floor.
Like, worst case scenario, it's basically a Windrake.
Yeah, like a 2/1 fly for 3 is fine. But, just you can pay 2 mana to seal a card. then sack it to this, then that turn the seal into dragon fodder. That's
Yep.
fine.
Which is really
You
good.
can sacrifice a land late game to just turn it into bodies.
Mm-hmm.
You can sacrifice just a creature that is less relevant than to one. Like,
Yeah.
man, I think
Does
it's
this?
a little too good.
I think this definitely wants to be like a more restrictive sacrifice ability, like
Well,
sacrifice something more restrictive than permanent,
Non-land permanent.
non-land permanent, or it could say specifically artifact.
I could see that.
know.
Like, at common, I would really want this to cost 4 mana. At uncommon, I think it's fine.
So this is a little
just not a
awkward
thing.
because it's a design that used to be at 4 mana, and I think I was a part of a push to make it not 4 mana. But mostly that was because I thought the numbers were bad at the 4 mana version. I thought it was like too much of a difference between the base and the paying the cost. I did not mean this to be the solution.
Sacred permanent, make N insect. Might be closer to what you intended.
That's kind of more what I was thinking, yeah.
Okay, it's less variance.
Yeah, like I prefer my cards to have like a not absurd difference between their floor and their ceiling. You know?
This is another card that I wish was cropped closer to the subject.
Oh, the Bombardiers?
Well, yeah, like, the subject of the art is a woman going,
Huh.
aren't Beatles gross
Yeah.
and amazing? And the subject of the card is the Beatles, and it just does not read as a creature.
Yeah. It's a little awkward. Let's move on.
Yes, thoughts?
I think Koala already talked about this, didn't he?
Oh.
Or-
Sorry, I thought we interrupted him after reading the card name. Anyway,
Huh.
Narum Heretic. 2 and a black for a 3/2 insect cleric. Love that type line. You can pay a runic, tap Narum Heretic. It gains indestructible until end of turn.
So effectively regenerated.
Wow.
Except, once again, interacts poorly with neg counters.
I really enjoyed this in Dominaria when it was a reference to regenerate on a reference to drudge skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the context of a set that's trying to make you remember regenerate, I don't think.
The tap just seems completely unnecessary here.
Yeah, I would just make it more like Wily Bandor, where it's just gains indestructible, assuming you want that in, like you said, a neg counter environment at all. I like this use of runic where you don't it is situationally useful. So leaving up your structure, your seal, you're not doing anything. You're not going out of your way to not tap those, but you are just making use of them. Situation.
Arguably, that probably makes it too good.
I could see an argument for that, since it can trade really well with 3 power.
Mm-hmm. It's the card's kind of just in an awkward space. Like there's maybe an argument for just like runic mana doesn't want to be the cost for an indestructible ability. Like you just don't want creature protection with no mana cost. Like there is no mana cost here.
What you're saying is you're not holding anything up, since the artifacts in the set really don't tap.
Yes, you're tapping a structure to get this indestructible. You're tapping a seal. This is very low on opportunity cost. Then I'm just saying, therefore it's probably just like not very fun.
I could definitely see that.
We want to move on.
Yeah.
So here we have the other seal card that I was saying that because when we were talking about the first seal indestructible trick, we were saying, oh, why isn't it something that like interacts well with -1 counters? And I said there's one of that coming up, and here it is. Soul Tether, 1 black for an aura. When the enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control. Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. I was wrong about this card. This is enchant creature, not enchant creature you control. Huh.
This is similar to it. I
There's a
can't remember if it was
Innistrad card?
Absent Restored or Dark Ascension Aura.
Mm-hmm.
It was tuned to black.
Grim Return,
Yeah,
Arshik says.
Grim Return. Okay.
Wait, no, that's wrong.
Tuned to black enchant creature. When enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. I believe was the text, and it was not a good card. It was a card that I personally loved jamming into decks, but you're spending a card to maybe do something.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like not great. I can't remember the rarity for the life of me. I do believe it was common though.
Yeah. So this is weird.
Giving it seal does make it better since you can do it during combat.
It was Unhallowed Pact.
Oh no, thank you.
And that was a common, Casual informs us.
Yeah. Man, Unhallowed
So
Pact.
I infinitely prefer this to the other seal design.
Yeah, I agree.
I would agree too.
It very much makes use like Flash is often hard to make players feel like it matters.
Mm-hmm. And this is
The
a
players
one way
know
to do it.
how that exists, like the hidden information, and again, this creates tension with Sealed.
Which is really cool. I
If
like,
your
especially like this
opponent
is.
has a relic in 2 black, you might play around.
You're terrified, right? Like this is like, especially to people who are bad. You're like, I don't want to play my big creature. He's gonna steal it.
I don't want to block with my.
Oh my god. That's just really. I think that's really fun. All right. So this is a win.
Sealed card in black.
So, and we have our third sealed card in black, obviously supporting the blue-black sealed theme that's going on. It is Bane Statue Barrier. Who would like to read this?
So, Bane Statue Barrier is 3 into black for sorcery. Put 4 -1/-1 counters on target creature with heal for 2 into black.
I enjoy this.
It's a very functional design. I think the seal is costed properly.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Too much to add.
This is really cool.
Is there anything in the set that this doesn't kill?
At common?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there are a few things.
Yeah. So yeah, this is mostly murder, and even when it doesn't kill the creature, it's still mostly murder. So it's really strong, but I'm okay with that. I want seal cards to be really strong because that's fun. You know. So yeah, I think we're satisfied with that. Or Koala, any developmental problems? No? Power level? Koala?
Yes. Are you asking for me to read the next card? You cut out there a bit.
Oh, I did? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and read the next card.
Black Scar Chargers. It's a 4/2 for 3 and a black, so 4 mana. Creature, human berserker. It has the warband. When it becomes paired with a creature, both creatures gain menace until end of turn. This is aggressive.
Oof. This is an aggro card right here. This is Black's. So this is like definitely Black's best aggressive card so far, right?
Yeah, like very high ceiling.
Very high. I would agree with that. Yeah.
This and Soul Tether are just 2 cards in black that have a lot of variance, but like that's fine. Most of the cards in black are decently low variance, so having some of that is nice.
Have some swingy dudes who want to swing out.
Yeah, and I appreciate the way he cropped this.
Yeah, it's like this looks like a warband, which is pretty awesome. So I like it.
And 2 toughness does make it so you can deal with this.
Oh yeah, this gets shocked.
Yeah,
The high help.
There is a shock for creatures in the set, even.
Yeah.
And this just gets blocked by 2/1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is
From
a
the
very,
Bombardier Beetle.
it's a very fair card. It's exciting and fair.
It's good. Cool. Nameless Whispers. You want to read this, Simon?
Yeah. Nameless Whispers and is 3 into black for sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. Add black for each land card discarded this way. Mind drops are okay and sealed. Never aimed towards draft or constructed. This doesn't play into any set themes, but it doesn't not like I don't think it disrupts too much. I don't think it's too distracting.
No, it's just like a generically kind of cool looking mind
I
rot.
do think black was strategically chosen to allow you to seal something. You will often be able to spend.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. Where it's like I play my Nameless Whispers, they discard a land and something else, I seal something. Yeah, like if that wasn't intentional, good job anyways.
If I'm not hitting
I gotta agree with that. Yeah, that's fantastic.
if I'm not hitting gas, I turn that lack of gas
Into opportunity at the very least.
Yeah.
It has utility. That's cool. Yeah, all right, we're a fan of that. Cool. Wasteland Bandits. 3 and a black for a 2/2 creature human rogue. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent distributes 2 -1/-1 counters among 1 or 2 creatures they control. So this is the black I don't like your creature that we see in many sets. Not usually at common. What are our thoughts?
Like asking the opponent to distribute neg counters on their own creatures. My instinct is to say, that's probably not common, but I can't think of a good reason. It's not like giving the opponent a choice is something that's not done in common. Mind rots do it all the time.
Right.
I get it, and it's hard for this to 2-for-1 because the opponent gets choice, so probably should be fine.
They just get to go, what's the highest toughness creature I have that I don't care about? All right, there you go.
Yeah. The only thing I don't love about this is the neg counter confusion.
Right. It just plays much into that again.
This reads weird to me. Like something about the phrasing seems
So
off and
people in the Twitch chat are saying that they kind of expected it to be among creatures they control, which actually there's some precedent for Wizards specifically pointing out that it's 1 or 2. So I think this is actually how Wizards would template this. Even it's wordier, but in many cases less confusing. I think.
I think we can move on.
Go. Scarland Devourer, 4 and a black for a 3/6 creature. It's a horror. Whenever you cast a sealed spell, so no, whenever you crack open a sealed artifact, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. So this is the second case of conditional Death Touch that we've seen in Black Commons. This is a wall.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like
3/6?
The 1/3 Death Touch Scorpion was in Zendikar, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of annoying to deal with. This is a 36. I'm not sure I like potentially. Or okay, it's only one shot. It's EOT.
I mean, it's awkward in that like it also has 3 power, which just naturally kills a lot of the format already, except for the other walls.
That probably goes at least half of the creatures.
Like it's really weird.
It is a horror, so that I'm not saying that justifies being too weird.
Right.
Like it does create more tension around sealed, which I enjoy. I'm not sure that I like this. That this might ask you to pop a sealed spell when you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. It's asking Seal to bend to its will, which I think makes Seal less interesting.
like, unless if all of the sealed cards are desirable during combat, or at least most of the common ones, that might be too finicky.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this.
I'm not completely opposed to it. It's just I almost want a justification for it. I'm not sure what this is trying to do.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where you
enjoy
like.
the concept of creating tension around shield, but I'm not sure I like the way it's doing it.
Yes, I agree. Any thoughts, Koala?
This just bores me, honestly. It's okay. It does its thing. It kills its big devourer. The flavor's on point. It's just not an interesting card to me. It's like, meh. Like, I'll play this unlimited. I won't feel good about it. Won't feel bad about it. It just kind of exists. It's kind of the hard part about commons for me is it's hard to get excited about them, even though I do understand they're very good and kind of what makes a set live or die.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we can move on to the last black common. So we have a horrid rite. You want to read this, Koala?
Yes, this is a sorcery. It's 4 black, so 6 mana. Destroy target creature. That creature's controller loses 1 life for each artifact you control. This is a solid removal spell. It kills everything. I think it could probably be 5 mana, I think, is a more reasonable price. 6 mana is kind of asking a lot, but 6 mana kill spells do exist in limited nowadays.
Trying not to overlap with the 4 neg counter one.
Mm-hmm. I think this being at 6, yeah, is preferable when the 4 mana one is in where it is. And this is likely, you can occasionally use this as a win condition where you're just like, you lose 4. You know, your blocker doesn't exist anymore. I swing in for however much. I think this is in a fine state.
Yeah, like counting artifacts with... I enjoy that it's only 1 life, since that's enough to make keeping your structures alive feel more rewarding, but not feel punishing for using your seal, your relics up. So, yeah, I have nothing
Cool.
to add.
Anyway, just because of time constraints, I'm thinking wins and then maybe come and do the uncommons at another time.
Oh, absolutely. It's already been a long time. And
so overall, the creature counts does seem a little low in black. It could just be back that up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was skipping to talk about the overall look of the black commons.
Yeah, its actual curve seems reasonable.
There's only 9 creatures.
Like,
I mean, once again, lots of artifact creatures, but
I would like
that's
it to
probably
have
normal, actually.
I'd like to have 1 more cheap aggressive creature instead of like a 4 mana plus card.
Mm-hmm.
Just to support Warband a bit, but not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's ruining black or anything not to have that change.
Yeah. Well, so part of the problem that I've talked about is that most of the artifact creatures at common are higher cost. So he's removing what?
Oh, sorry, they're expensive, so they don't serve the purpose of filling out mana curves.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's removing creature slots from these colors, but not inserting creatures back at the slots from where he's removing them as much. It seems, you know. I mean, in black, it's actually he has 3 2-drops in black. It's about normal.
Yeah, it's just one of them is functionally a Vanilla Bear, and one of them is a 1/3, which makes like Warband little.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say feel bad, but hard to support.
That's actually something we haven't talked about. There haven't been vanillas, which is
really like that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's something where that my philosophy is that if a set can't contain vanillas, it's just I don't know. It's like
Too
that
big.
never has to happen. Is what I'm trying to say. Is basically what I have to say for a standard legal set. Where it is supposed to be this kind of like we're appealing to a wide variety of people. It's he has said once again that he's okay with having the complexity higher, so I respect that choice, and it's not ruining anything. It's just like
I also
I'll
think
shame
that
him.
like there's an aspect of like a French if you don't have any French vanillas or like pseudo vanillas in your set, I see that as an issue. But like no, just straight up vanilla creatures, I don't think as much as a problem. I'd much rather see things more like Kessig Dire Swine from Innistrad, which was the 6-mana 4/4 that got +2/+2. If you had Delirium, or it's +2/+2 and Trample, over things like Kindercatch, which was 3 green for 6/6 common with no abilities. Like I think there's enough that you can make things simplistic enough without making them completely vanilla to make them and have them still do their job in the set just fine. Like I'd much rather see pseudo vanilla type cards.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. So I'm gonna turn off the stream and then maybe turn it back on just to chop the VOD in half.
Okay.
So let me do that. So yeah, like that is us having gone through white and blue and black and having taken 2 hours to do so. Or how long? More than that?
2 hours. We started at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it is 9:16 p.m.
Nice. Well, we have a lot to say.
We still have artifacts, which is another.
Jesus. Yeah, so it's like we're really like halfway through the commons. Oh my god. Well, we have a lot to say.
Arguably less.
Yeah.